A billionaire humiliated a waiter at a gala dinner until he calmly said, "Actually, I bought this hotel yesterday." Chapter 1. The Invisible Man. The Grand Meridian Hotel in San Francisco gleamed like a jewel on Nob Hill, its Art Deco facade lit up against the October night sky. Inside the Imperial Ballroom, the city's elite gathered for the annual Tech Innovation Gala, a black-tie affair where billion-dollar deals happened over champagne and millionaires competed to see who could donate the most to charity while writing it off on their taxes. Daniel Rivers adjusted his bow tie in the staff bathroom mirror, making sure it was perfectly straight. The white server's jacket fit him well, crisp and anonymous. Just another waiter in a sea of invisible service staff. Exactly how he wanted it. "Rivers, you're on champagne duty for the VIP section," barked Gerald, the head waiter, a perpetually stressed man in his 50s who treated every gala like a military operation. "And for God's sake, don't spill anything on anyone important. Last year's incident nearly got us all fired." "Understood," Daniel said quietly, picking up his tray of crystal flutes. He'd been working at the Grand Meridian for exactly 3 weeks. The other staff thought he was just another struggling transplant to San Francisco, working multiple jobs to afford rent in the most expensive city in America. They had no idea that Daniel had more money in his cryptocurrency wallets than most of them would see in 10 lifetimes. They didn't know that CipherCore Technologies, the blockchain company that had revolutionized secure digital transactions and was now valued at $8 billion, was his creation. They didn't know that D. Rivers, the famously reclusive founder who'd never done a press interview or appeared at a tech conference, was currently carrying a tray of Dom Perignon through a crowd of people desperately trying to meet him. The irony wasn't lost on Daniel. "Champagne, sir?" Daniel offered his tray to a tech executive he recognized from Forbes covers. The man didn't even look at him, just grabbed a glass without acknowledgement. To people like this, waiters were furniture that occasionally moved. Daniel had learned this quickly. The ultra-wealthy existed in a bubble where service workers were functionally invisible. It was precisely why his disguise worked so well. For 3 weeks, he'd been conducting an experiment and gathering intelligence. The Grand Meridian was for sale. The current owner, Richard Pemberton, had run the historic hotel into the ground through mismanagement and was desperately seeking a buyer. Daniel's investment team had been negotiating the purchase through layers of shell companies and legal representatives. But Daniel wanted to see the operation firsthand before committing $340 million. He wanted to know how the staff were treated, whether the hotel's legendary reputation for service was real or just marketing, whether it was worth saving. So he created a fake resume, interviewed for a server position, and spent 3 weeks carrying trays, cleaning tables, and being utterly invisible to the very people who would kill for a meeting with CipherCore's mysterious founder. "More champagne over here," a sharp voice cut through the ballroom chatter. Daniel turned to see a woman in her 60s, dripping in diamonds, snapping her fingers at him like he was a dog. He recognized her. Victoria Ashford, old money, sat on half a dozen nonprofit boards, and was known in tech circles for her venture capital fund that backed disruptive innovators, as long as they went to the right schools and knew the right people. "Right away, ma'am," Daniel said, approaching with his tray. "Finally, the service here has gone completely downhill." Victoria grabbed 2 glasses, one for herself and one for the man beside her, a tech bro in his early 40s wearing a suit that cost more than most people's cars. "Tristan, darling, I was just telling the Hendersons that your new AI startup is going to revolutionize everything." Tristan Blackwell. Daniel knew him by reputation, a serial entrepreneur who'd had 2 modest exits and now acted like he was Elon Musk. His new company, Iris AI, had raised $200 million on promises of artificial general intelligence that every actual AI researcher knew was complete bullshit. "Well, we're going to disrupt the entire industry," Tristan said loudly, clearly performing for the nearby listeners. "Unlike these old-guard crypto companies like CipherCore, totally anonymous founder, probably a scam, am I right? We're transparent, accountable, the future." Daniel's expression remained perfectly neutral as he refilled glasses, but internally he was amused. Iris AI had tried to poach 3 of his top engineers last month with offers of equity that would be worthless when the company inevitably collapsed. "Excuse me, waiter," Tristan said, finally noticing Daniel. This champagne is warm. Bring me something cold. Would you? And make it quick. I don't have all night to wait for the help to do their jobs. Of course, sir. Right away. As Daniel turned to leave, he heard Tristan continue. See, this is the problem with these old hotels. Hiring minimum wage workers who don't care about quality. When I make my next exit, I'm buying a hotel, going to run it properly with people who actually have work ethic. Daniel paused, just for a moment, then continued walking. He'd heard variations of this speech a dozen times in 3 weeks. Rich people who'd never worked a service job in their lives, convinced that poverty was a moral failing rather than a systemic issue. The kitchen was controlled chaos. Chefs shouted orders, servers rushed in and out, and the temperature was approximately that of the sun's surface. New champagne for table 7, Daniel told the bartender. A sharp-eyed woman in her 30s named Marie who'd been kind to him since his first day. Let me guess. Someone complained it was too warm? Marie rolled her eyes as she pulled a fresh bottle from the ice. These people would complain about free diamonds if they weren't polished enough. Pretty much. You handling it okay? I know events like this can be rough for new people. She poured carefully, the champagne fizzing perfectly. Some of these guests treat us like we're not even human. I'm fine, Daniel assured her. I've dealt with difficult people before. What he didn't say. He'd negotiated with venture capitalists who'd tried to steal his company. Had faced down corporate espionage attempts. Had received death threats from people who'd lost money on bad crypto investments and blamed him. A rude billionaire at a gala was barely a blip on his radar. Marie studied him for a moment. You're different from most of the servers here. I can't quite figure you out, Rivers. I'm just a guy who needs a job, Daniel said with a slight smile. Right? And I'm the Queen of England. But she smiled back. Well, whoever you really are, you're one of the good ones. Now get that champagne out there before Prince Charming throws a fit. Daniel returned to the ballroom with fresh champagne. The event was in full swing now. A string quartet played in the corner. Guests clustered in groups discussing deals and gossip, and the charity auction was about to begin. He wove through the crowd, invisible again, until he reached Tristan's table. Your champagne, sir. Properly chilled. Tristan didn't thank him, just grabbed the glass and immediately took a sip, his face twisted. This is the wrong vintage. I specifically requested the 2012 Dom Perignon. Daniel knew for a fact that Tristan had requested no such thing. I apologize, sir. Let me check with. Do you have any idea who I am? Tristan's voice rose, drawing attention from nearby tables. I'm Tristan Blackwell. I've built companies worth hundreds of millions. And you're bringing me the wrong champagne like some amateur. Sir, I can get you whatever you'd prefer. What I'd prefer is competent service. But clearly, that's too much to ask from someone making minimum wage. Tristan looked around at his growing audience, performing now. This is exactly what's wrong with the service industry. No pride, no attention to detail, just going through the motions for a paycheck. Victoria laughed, a tinkling sound like breaking glass. Oh, Tristan, don't be too hard on him. I'm sure he's doing his best. It's not his fault he's limited. Something cold settled in Daniel's chest. Not anger, he trained himself past petty emotional reactions years ago, but a crystalline clarity about exactly who these people were. I apologize for the confusion, Daniel said, his voice perfectly calm. Let me personally ensure you get exactly what you want. See that you do, Tristan said dismissively, already turning back to his conversation. God, the incompetence in this place. As Daniel walked away, he caught someone's eye across the room. A woman, mid-30s, standing slightly apart from the clusters of guests. She wore a simple black dress, elegant but not showy, and was watching the scene with an expression of distinct distaste. When she saw Daniel looking, she gave him a small, sympathetic smile and a tiny shake of her head, as if to say, I'm sorry you had to deal with that. Daniel smiled back, a real one this time, before disappearing into the crowd. He didn't know it yet, but that brief moment of connection would change everything. An hour later, The charity auction was underway. A professional auctioneer worked the room, selling off donated experiences and items, while wealthy guests competed to see who could pay the most for things they didn't need. Next item, the auctioneer announced. A private dinner for 8 at Chef Thomas Lawrence exclusive restaurant, Lumiere. Starting bid, $20,000. Hands shot up. The bidding quickly escalated to $60,000 for a single dinner. Daniel, circulating with wine refills, watched the spectacle with detached interest. He'd been to charity galas before, back when he'd first sold his initial startup and was trying to figure out how to exist in wealthy circles. He'd learned quickly that he hated them. Too much performance. Too little genuine care about the actual causes. $75,000 to the gentleman in the back, the auctioneer called out. Going once, going twice. $100,000. The voice came from the woman in the black dress. She'd raised her hand calmly, her expression serene. The room murmured with interest. The auctioneer beamed. $100,000. Going once, twice. Sold to the lady in black. As applause rippled through the room, Tristan's voice carried clearly. Must be nice to throw away money like that. Probably inherited it. These trust fund kids have no concept of what money actually means. The woman's smile tightened slightly, but she didn't respond. Daniel found himself drifting closer, curious. During a lull in service, Daniel ended up near the bar where the woman was getting a drink. Not champagne, he noticed, but sparkling water. Congratulations on your auction win, Daniel said quietly, breaking protocol by speaking to a guest without being addressed first. She looked surprised, then pleased. Thank you. It's for a good cause, the children's hospital. Though I'm sure some people think it's just showing off. Some people think everything is showing off. She laughed, a genuine sound. True. I'm Sophia, by the way. Sophia Chin. Daniel. He didn't offer his last name. You're handling tonight's crowd very well, Daniel. I saw what happened earlier with that awful man. I'm sorry you had to endure that. Part of the job, Daniel said with a shrug. It shouldn't be. Treating people poorly because they're in service positions. Sophia shook her head. It says everything about the person doing it and nothing about the person receiving it. Daniel studied her. You don't seem like the typical gala attendee. I'm not. I run a nonprofit that builds schools in underserved communities. I hate these events, honestly, but they're necessary for fundraising. You meet the donors where they are. She took a sip of water. What about you? You don't seem like a typical waiter either. What makes you say that? The way you carry yourself. The way you observe everything. You're watching this whole event like you're studying it. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent. Are you a journalist? Writing an exposé on the tech elite. Daniel laughed despite himself. Nothing that interesting. Just someone paying attention. Well, just someone paying attention is rarer than you'd think in rooms like this. Sophia glanced at her watch. I should get back. But it was nice talking to you, Daniel. Nice meeting someone real in all this. She gestured at the ballroom. Performance. You too, Sophia. As she walked away, Daniel found himself smiling. In a room full of people desperate to impress each other, he just had the most genuine conversation of the night with someone who had no idea who he was. Gerald appeared at his elbow. Rivers, stop chatting with guests. VIP section needs more wine. On it. The rest of the evening blurred together. More wine. More champagne. More watching wealthy people perform wealth for each other. Until dessert was being served and everything went sideways. Tristan Blackwell was drunk. Not falling down drunk, but that specific kind of wealthy person drunk where all filters disappeared and the cruelty underneath came out to play. Daniel was clearing empty plates when Tristan grabbed his arm. You, waiter. I need you to do something for me. Of course, sir. What do you need? See that woman over there? The one in black. Tristan pointed at Sophia, who was talking with a group near the windows. Go tell her that Tristan Blackwell would like to buy her a drink. Tell her I'm very interested in discussing her nonprofit. The leer in his voice made it clear what he was actually interested in. Sir, I don't think. I'm not paying you to think. I'm telling you to deliver a message. Tristan pulled out his wallet, drunkenly extracting $100 bill. Here, for your trouble. Now go. Daniel looked at the money, then at Tristan, then at Sophia across the room. No, he said quietly. Tristan blinked, as if he'd misheard. What? I said no. I'm not going to do that. The conversations around them began to fade as people noticed the confrontation. You're refusing? Tristan's voice rose. You're refusing an order from a guest? Do you have any idea how much money I spend in this hotel? I could have you fired with one phone call. That's your prerogative, Daniel said calmly. But I'm still not going to harass a guest on your behalf. Tristan's face flushed red. He stood up, swaying slightly. You arrogant little. Who the hell do you think you are? You're a waiter, a nobody. You exist to serve people like me. And if I tell you to do something, you do it. The ballroom had gone quiet now. Everyone was watching. Gerald rushed over, his face panicked. Mr. Blackwell, I sincerely apologize for this employee's behavior. Daniel, you're suspended effective immediately. Please leave the floor. No, suspension isn't enough, Tristan said loudly. I want him fired. Right now. In front of everyone. I want him to understand what happens when you disrespect your betters. Victoria Ashford chimed in. Really? The insolence. In my day, service workers knew their place. Daniel stood there, perfectly calm, as Gerald wrung his hands and other guests murmured agreement. He saw Sophia pushing through the crowd, her face concerned. He could leave, walk away, let it go. Or, Daniel took a slow breath. Mr. Blackwell, he said, his voice carrying clearly across the silent ballroom. I have a question for you. I don't answer questions from the help. When you threaten to have someone fired, do you actually follow through? Or is it just performance? Because I'm genuinely curious about your process. Tristan sputtered. My process? My process is calling the owner of this hotel and having you thrown out on the street where you belong. The owner, Richard Pemberton. That's right. Richard and I go way back. One phone call and you're done. Daniel nodded slowly. That's interesting, because Richard Pemberton doesn't own this hotel anymore. Gerald's face went white. What are you talking about? The sale closed yesterday afternoon. The Grand Meridian has a new owner as of 3 p.m. Pacific Time, October 14th. Daniel pulled his phone from his pocket, opening an email and turning the screen toward Gerald. You can verify with the legal department if you'd like. Gerald stared at the document, his hands shaking. This is real? Who bought it? Someone in the crowd asked. Daniel's eyes never left Tristan's face. I did. The silence was absolute. You? Tristan laughed, but it sounded uncertain. You're a waiter. You're lying. I'm a waiter because I wanted to see how this hotel operates before committing $340 million. I'm also the founder of CipherCore Technologies. Daniel's voice remained perfectly level. You might have heard of it. You called it probably a scam earlier this evening. Victoria Ashford gasped. Several people pulled out their phones, clearly Googling frantically. Tristan's face had gone from red to white. No, that's not possible. Rivers is. Daniel Rivers. Yes. He turned to Gerald. You're not suspended, by the way, and neither am I, obviously, though I will be transitioning out of server duties effective immediately. He looked back at Tristan, who seemed to be having trouble processing reality. Mr. Blackwell, you wanted me fired for refusing to harass a woman on your behalf. You called me a nobody. You said I exist to serve people like you. Daniel's voice was soft but carried to every corner of the room. Here's what I learned working here for 3 weeks. The nobodies you're so quick to dismiss? They're working 2 jobs to afford rent. They're putting themselves through school. They're supporting families. They have dreams and talents and worth that has nothing to do with their bank accounts. He gestured around the ballroom. Most of the people in this room have had every advantage. Inherited wealth, elite education, networks that open doors. And yet you treat people without those advantages like they're less than human. I didn't, Tristan started. but Daniel held up a hand. I'm not going to humiliate you further. I'm not going to have you thrown out or banned from the hotel. You're going to finish your evening, and tomorrow you'll wake up and hopefully think about the kind of person you want to be. Daniel's expression softened slightly. I was poor once, Mr. Blackwell. I worked minimum wage jobs. I know what it's like to be invisible to people like you. And I built a billion-dollar company anyway, not because poverty made me virtuous, but because I had opportunities and I worked hard and I got lucky. He looked around at the assembled wealth. Money doesn't make you better than anyone. It just makes you louder. And if that's all you have to show for your wealth, the ability to be cruel to people who can't fight back, then you're the poorest person in this room. The silence stretched. Then Sophia started clapping. Slowly, others joined in, until the ballroom echoed with applause. Tristan stood frozen, his face a mask of humiliation and shock. Then, without a word, he turned and walked out of the ballroom. Victoria Ashford followed, muttering about inappropriate behavior. Daniel watched them go, then turned to Gerald. We should talk about operational improvements tomorrow, and I want to discuss raises for the entire service staff. Gerald nodded mutely, still processing. As the crowd began to disperse, buzzing with gossip and excitement, Sophia appeared at Daniel's side. So, she said, her eyes sparkling with amusement and something warmer. You're Dee Rivers. I am. And you spent 3 weeks working as a waiter. I did. That's either incredibly humble or slightly insane. Daniel smiled. Can't it be both? Sophia laughed. I suppose it can. She held out her hand formally. It's nice to meet you, Mr. Rivers. Again. For the first time. Officially. He shook her hand, feeling the warmth of her grip. Call me Daniel. And it's nice to meet you too, Miss Chun. I have a feeling this is the beginning of a very interesting friendship. Friendship? Sophia raised an eyebrow. After a reveal like that, I was thinking more along the lines of a fascinating collaboration. My nonprofit could use someone with your resources and obvious talent for dramatic timing. I'm listening. Good. How about we discuss it over coffee? Somewhere that's not a gala full of people who are going to be gossiping about this for months. Daniel glanced around the ballroom, at the staff who were staring at him in shock, at the guests pulling out phones to spread the news, at the life he just irrevocably changed by revealing himself. He thought about going back to being anonymous. Impossible now. He thought about Tristan's face when he realized he'd been humiliating a billionaire. Satisfying. He thought about the look in Sophia's eyes. Genuine interest, not in his money but in him. Intriguing. Coffee sounds perfect, Daniel said. Tomorrow, there's a place in the Mission I like. No one will recognize us there. It's a date. Sophia paused. Not a date, a coffee date. A friendly. I know what you meant, Daniel said, smiling. But I wouldn't mind if it was a date too. Sophia's answering smile was radiant. Then it's definitely a date. As she walked away to collect her coat, Marie the bartender appeared at Daniel's elbow. So, she said conversationally, billionaire, huh? Yeah. You're still buying drinks for the staff tomorrow night, right? Because we have so many questions. Daniel laughed, the tension finally breaking. I'll buy drinks for the whole month. Deal. Also, for the record, that was the most satisfying thing I've ever seen in 15 years of service industry work. Glad I could provide some entertainment. As the gala wound down and guests filtered out, Daniel stood in the ballroom that now belonged to him, thinking about second chances and new beginnings. He'd bought a hotel. He'd met someone extraordinary. And he'd maybe, just maybe, taught a few people that treating others with dignity wasn't optional. It was the bare minimum of being human. Not bad for a night's work. Chapter 2. Fallout. The next morning, Daniel woke up to 847 missed calls. He stared at his phone in disbelief, still groggy from only 4 hours of sleep. The sun streamed through the windows of his modest apartment in the outer Sunset, a 2-bedroom place he'd kept despite being able to afford literally any property in San Francisco. His publicist, Rebecca Chin, no relation to Sophia, as far as he knew, had left 17 increasingly frantic voicemails. His lawyer had sent a dozen texts. His CipherCore executive team had created an emergency Slack channel called #WhatTheActualHell. And the media. Oh, the media. Daniel scrolled through headlines on his tablet. CipherCore founder revealed. Tech billionaire was working undercover as hotel waiter. TechCrunch. D. Rivers emerges from anonymity with $340 million hotel purchase and viral confrontation. Bloomberg. Billionaire serves billionaire. The Gala confrontation everyone's talking about. Vanity Fair. Who is Daniel Rivers? Inside the mind of tech's most mysterious founder, Wired. Someone had filmed the entire confrontation on their phone. The video had 12 million views on Twitter and was trending globally. Daniel watched himself on the screen, perfectly calm, telling Tristan Blackwell that money didn't make him better than anyone. The comments were passionate. This is the energy we need from billionaires. He really worked as a waiter for 3 weeks just to see how his employees were treated. King behavior. Tristan Blackwell just became the most memeable villain of 2024. The way he said, "I bought this hotel yesterday," I screamed. There were also, predictably, negative takes. Billionaire cosplaying as poor is gross actually. This is just PR. He's still a capitalist exploiter. Cool story, but redistribute your wealth challenge. Daniel sighed. He'd known this would happen eventually. The anonymity couldn't last forever. But he'd hoped for a more controlled reveal, not a viral confrontation at a charity gala. His phone rang. "Rebecca, please tell me you're seeing all this," she said without preamble. "Good morning to you too. Daniel, we have interview requests from literally every major publication. 60 Minutes wants you. The Today Show wants you. Joe Rogan wants you. There's a bidding war for your memoir rights, and you haven't even agreed to write a memoir. I'm not doing any of those things. I know, you're very principled about privacy. But Daniel, you can't just drop a bombshell like that and disappear. We need to control the narrative. The narrative is fine. I told the truth. What else is there to control?" Rebecca made a strangled sound. "There's always more. What about your background? Your childhood? How you built CipherCore? Everyone wants the full story, and right now they're digging. And if we don't provide the authorized version, they'll create an unauthorized one." Daniel walked to his kitchen and started making coffee, regular drip coffee, not the expensive single-origin nonsense that tech executives love to brag about. "Rebecca, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not doing a media tour. If people want to know about CipherCore, they can read our white papers. If they want to know about me personally, they can wonder. You're impossible. You knew that when you took me on as a client. I thought you'd get easier over time. I was wrong." Rebecca paused. "Fine, but you have to give me something. One interview. You choose the outlet. You control the questions. But we need to put something official out there before the speculation gets completely out of hand." Daniel considered this. "I'll think about it. That's not a no, so I'll take it. Also, Tristan Blackwell's publicist has been calling. I'm sure they have. He wants to apologize. Publicly." "No. Daniel, I meant what I said last night. I'm not interested in humiliating him further. He's learned a lesson or he hasn't. Either way, a forced public apology helps no one. You're really just going to let this go? I'm going to focus on running a hotel and a tech company and living my life. Tristan can do whatever he needs to do." Rebecca sighed again. "Fine, I'll handle the calls. But Daniel, check the CipherCore stock price." He did. It had jumped 34% overnight. Apparently, the market loved a mysterious billionaire with a flair for the dramatic. At 10 a.m., Daniel met with the Grand Meridian senior staff in the hotel's executive conference room. Gone was the waiter's uniform. Today he wore dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt. His standard uniform for CipherCore board meetings. Casual but competent. The staff looked nervous. Gerald sat at the head of the table, looking like he hadn't slept. Marie was there too, along with the head chef, the concierge, the housekeeping director, and several department heads. "I want to start by apologizing," Daniel said, sitting down. "I should have been honest with you all from the beginning. Going undercover was, I thought it was the right move to really understand the operation, but it put you all in an awkward position. You have nothing to apologize for, Marie said firmly. You treated us like equals even though you were, well, did you really work here just to spy on us? The head chef, Antoine, asked. He was a temperamental genius who'd been with the hotel for 20 years. Not spy. Learn. There's a difference. Daniel pulled out his tablet. I wanted to see how the hotel really functioned, how the staff were treated, whether the problems I saw in the financial reports were systemic or just paperwork issues. And what did you find? Gerald asked nervously. That you have an incredible team being severely underpaid and undervalued. That the staff work their asses off despite having inadequate resources and outdated systems. That Gerald is doing the job of 3 managers because Pemberton refused to hire proper support staff. Daniel looked around the table. I found that this hotel has good bones and great people, but it's been bleeding talent because no one was investing in it properly. So what happens now? The housekeeping director asked. Are you firing people? Bringing in your own team? The opposite. Everyone here keeps their job if they want it. Salaries are being reviewed. I want everyone at market rate minimum, and above market for the positions that have been doing extra work. He tapped his tablet. I'm also hiring. We're adding 2 assistant managers under Gerald, upgrading the entire tech infrastructure, renovating the staff break rooms, and implementing a profit-sharing program. The room was silent. You're giving us raises and hiring more people? Marie said slowly. You're not cutting costs? Cutting costs is what Pemberton did, and it nearly destroyed this place. I'm investing. Good staff retention is worth far more than short-term savings. How much are we talking for the raises? Gerald asked cautiously. Daniel showed him the spreadsheet. Gerald's eyes widened. This is a 30% increase across the board, plus performance bonuses and profit sharing. If the hotel does well, everyone shares in that success. Antoine the chef leaned back in his chair. Monsieur Rivers, I have worked in hotels for 35 years. I have never, not once, seen an owner do something like this. Then you've worked for the wrong owners. Why? Marie asked. I'm not complaining, but why are you being so generous? Daniel thought about how to answer. Because I remember what it's like to be on the other side. I worked food service to put myself through community college. I know what it feels like to be invisible to wealthy people. To have your work dismissed because it's just service. He met her eyes. And because ethical capitalism should actually be ethical. If I can't run a profitable hotel while paying people fairly, then I don't deserve to own a hotel. Ethical capitalism, the concierge muttered. Never thought I'd hear those words together. Well, let's see if I can make it work. Daniel pulled up another document. Now, let's talk about operational improvements. At 2 p.m., Daniel met Sophia at Ritual Coffee Roasters in the Mission District. She was already there when he arrived, sitting at a corner table with a latte and a book. She'd traded last night's elegant dress for jeans and a soft gray sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked even more beautiful in daylight. Sorry I'm late, Daniel said, sliding into the seat across from her. My morning meeting ran long. Don't worry, I've been enjoying watching you trend on Twitter. Sophia turned her phone to show him a particularly creative meme using his I bought this hotel yesterday line. Daniel groaned. Please tell me this will die down soon. Are you kidding? You're the main character of the internet right now. This will last for days. Maybe weeks. She grinned. How does it feel to be famous? Terrible. I specifically structured my entire life to avoid this. Well, you should have thought of that before dramatically revealing your identity at a gala. That was some serious Marvel movie energy. Despite himself, Daniel laughed. I didn't plan it. Tristan just pushed the wrong buttons. He pushed exactly the right buttons for creating viral content. Sophia's expression sobered. Seriously though, what you said about service workers, about dignity, that meant something. I've gotten about 50 messages from friends in the nonprofit world saying they're going to use that speech in trainings. It's not a speech. It's just basic human decency, which is rarer than it should be, especially in our circles. She took a sip of coffee. Speaking of which, I have a proposition for you. I'm listening. My nonprofit, Bridges to Tomorrow, builds schools and libraries in underserved communities. We've built 17 facilities in the last 5 years, but we're always struggling for funding. Most of our donors are individuals, not corporations, and we spend way too much time and energy on fundraising instead of actually building. You want me to donate. I want you to partner. Not just writing a check, though that would be nice too, but actually collaborating. Using your resources and expertise to scale what we're doing. Sophia's eyes were bright with passion. You built a global technology company from nothing. You understand systems and scaling and innovation. What if we applied that same thinking to education infrastructure? Daniel felt something click in his mind. You're talking about treating education like a tech problem, finding inefficiencies, optimizing processes, scaling solutions. Exactly. But with the understanding that we're dealing with human beings and communities, not just metrics and growth charts. How many schools could you build with proper funding and support? In the next 3 years? With the right backing, maybe 100, mostly in rural areas and underserved urban communities where public school infrastructure is falling apart. 100 schools. Daniel did the math in his head. That's about $150 million with our current cost structure. Which I know sounds like a lot. I'll do it. Sophia stopped mid-sentence. You'll... What? I'll partner with you. Full funding for the 3-year plan, plus operational support from CipherCore's infrastructure team. We'll treat it like a startup, rapid prototyping, iterative improvement, data-driven decision-making, but with education outcomes as the success metric instead of profit. Daniel, you can't just commit $150 million in a coffee shop. Why not? You just pitched me a program that will directly improve lives for thousands of kids. The ROI on education is incalculable. This is literally the best investment I could make. Sophia was staring at him like he'd grown a second head. Most philanthropists require months of due diligence and committee meetings, and I'm not most philanthropists. I'm a guy who spent 3 weeks working as a waiter to see if people were decent. You just spent the last hour talking about education equity with more passion and expertise than I've seen in 100 pitch meetings. I trust your vision. Daniel pulled out his phone. I'll have my lawyers draft a partnership agreement. Should we structure it as a direct investment, or do you want a separate foundation? I need to think about structure. Daniel, this is amazing, but I need to make sure I'm not agreeing to something that compromises our mission. I've seen too many nonprofits lose their way when they take on wealthy partners. Good. That's exactly the kind of careful thinking that makes me confident in this partnership. He put his phone away. Take your time. Review everything with your board. Do your due diligence on me. But the offer stands. Sophia shook her head, smiling. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. More billionaire-like? Ego. Demands. Need for control. I have plenty of ego. I just channel it into building things instead of controlling people. Daniel took a sip of his coffee, which was genuinely excellent. Besides, the whole point of having resources is being able to deploy them for meaningful purposes. What's the alternative? Buying a yacht. Most billionaires choose the yacht. Most billionaires are boring. Sophia laughed, and the sound made something warm unfold in Daniel's chest. They talked for another hour. About education. About tech. About the weird intersection of wealth and responsibility. Sophia told him about growing up in Seattle, her parents who'd immigrated from Taiwan with nothing, her scholarship to Stanford, her realization that she wanted to build things that mattered more than things that made money. Daniel told her about growing up in a trailer park in Nevada, about his single mother working 3 jobs, about teaching himself to code on a library computer, about building CipherCore in his apartment with maxed-out credit cards and pure determination. So the rags to riches story is real, Sophia said. It's real, but it's also luck. I had teachers who saw potential in me. I had free internet access at the library. I was born with a brain that happens to be good at abstract mathematics. Daniel's voice was serious. For every story like mine, there are 1,000 people just as talented who didn't get the breaks. That's why your work matters. You're creating opportunities for kids who might be the next great inventor or artist or leader, but who won't get there without infrastructure. You really get it. I lived it. I just happened to get lucky on the other side. Sophia reached across the table and took his hand. I'm really glad you came to that gala, even if you were there in disguise. Me too. Daniel looked at their joined hands, felt the warmth of her touch. Sophia, I should tell you something. I'm not good at this. At what? Relationships. Personal connection. I've spent 10 years building a company and hiding from public attention. I don't know how to be a normal person who goes on dates and has a social life. Good thing I'm not asking you to be normal. Sophia squeezed his hand. I'm asking you to be yourself. The person who worked as a waiter to understand his employees. The person who just committed $150 million to building schools without blinking. That person seems pretty great to me. That person is also going to be followed by cameras for the next few weeks, possibly months. If you're seen with me, you'll be dragged into the media circus. I run a nonprofit that works in communities most people ignore. I'm used to not being the center of attention. And honestly, if dating you means some of that spotlight shines on education inequality, I'm okay with that. You're remarkably practical for someone I just met. You're remarkably genuine for a billionaire. Sophia checked her watch. I have a meeting in an hour, but before I go, I want to ask you something. Anything. Last night, when Tristan was being awful to you, you stayed calm. Completely calm. How? Daniel thought about it. Because his words didn't have power over me. He was trying to make me feel small by pointing out I was just a waiter. But I knew I wasn't defined by his perception. I knew my worth had nothing to do with his ability to see it. And you learned that how? The hard way. By being poor and powerless and having people dismiss me for years. You either internalize it and break, or you learn that other people's limited vision is their problem, not yours. He smiled slightly. It's easier to have that perspective when you have money, I'll admit. But the lesson itself I learned long before I was wealthy. Teach me, Sophia said suddenly. Teach you what? That calm, that certainty. I run a nonprofit, which means I'm constantly dealing with donors who think they know better than me how to help communities. I need to learn how to have your unshakable confidence without, becoming arrogant. That's a narrow line to walk. Think you can help me find it? Daniel smiled. I think that's the best reason for a second date I've ever heard. So this is officially a date now? We've upgraded from coffee date to date date. If you're willing to be photographed with mysterious billionaire Daniel Rivers, then yes, absolutely a date. Sophia stood up, slinging her bag over her shoulder. Pick me up Friday at 7. Somewhere that's not a fancy gala or a tech industry event. I want to see how a newly famous billionaire has fun. I'll think of something. And Daniel? She leaned down and kissed his cheek, quick and warm. Thank you. For the school funding, yes, but mostly for being the kind of person who tips well and treats waiters like human beings. That's rarer than it should be. Then she was gone, leaving Daniel sitting in a Mission District coffee shop with the lingering warmth of her kiss on his cheek and the growing certainty that his carefully controlled life was about to get very, very complicated. He couldn't wait. That evening, Daniel returned to his CipherCore office for the first time since the revelation. The company occupied 4 floors of a downtown high-rise, all modern glass and open workspaces. When he stepped off the elevator, the entire engineering floor erupted in applause. The prodigal founder returns, shouted Mike Chun, his CTO and one of his first hires. Did you really work as a waiter? Please tell me you got tips. I got tips, and a lot of insight into service industry economics. His team crowded around, peppering him with questions. Daniel answered patiently, fielding everything from, "What did Tristan's face look like when you told him?" to, Are you really giving all the hotel staff raises? Finally, he made his way to his private office. A surprisingly modest space with a standing desk, 3 monitors, and walls covered in whiteboards filled with cryptographic equations. His executive team was waiting. Mike the CTO, Sarah Rodriguez the CFO, and James Kim the COO. So, Sarah said without preamble, you bought a hotel. I did. For $340 million. Correct. Without consulting the CFO. Daniel winced. I consulted my personal financial advisors. The purchase was from my personal holdings, not company funds. I know. I checked. Still would have been nice to get a heads up before I saw it on Bloomberg. But Sarah was smiling. For the record, the stock bump from your viral moment more than makes up for any concerns I might have about diversification of your personal assets. The board is thrilled, James added. Half of them have been begging you to do a press tour for years. They're calling this the best publicity CipherCore has ever had. I'm not doing a press tour. We know. We told them you'd say that. They're still thrilled. James pulled out his tablet. We do need to discuss operational changes, though. You can't exactly maintain the same level of anonymity anymore. I don't need anonymity. I just need privacy. Those are different things. Exactly. I'm not going to live my life in public. But I'm also not going to hide. Daniel sat down at his desk. What's the actual impact on company operations? Mike jumped in. Security's been upgraded. We're getting about 10 times the normal number of meeting requests from potential partners. Recruiting is already seeing an uptick in applications. And engineering morale is through the roof. Turns out having a founder who goes undercover to understand service workers makes people think you might actually care about employees. I do care about employees. We know. Now everyone else knows too. They spent the next hour reviewing operational matters. Partnership requests. Decline most. Explore a few. Interview requests. Decline all. Security protocols. Accept the recommendations. Investor relations. Let Sarah handle it. Finally, as the meeting was wrapping up, Sarah said casually, So, who was the woman in the black dress? The one everyone's speculating you're dating? How did you? Twitter is undefeated. There are approximately 50 threads analyzing your body language with her. Daniel groaned. Her name is Sophia Chen. She runs a non-profit building schools. We're going on a date Friday. And before you ask, yes, I'm going to invest in her organization. How much? $150 million over 3 years. Sarah whistled. That's your personal money, I assume? Yes. And before you object, it's a sound investment in human capital development with measurable outcomes and… Daniel. Sarah's voice was gentle. I'm not objecting. I'm just making sure you're thinking clearly and not making decisions based on a pretty face. I'm thinking clearly. She's brilliant, passionate, and has a track record of successful project implementation in challenging environments. The pretty face is a bonus. Mike grinned. He's so smitten. I'm not smitten. I'm interested. You committed $150 million after one meeting. That's smitten. That's efficient decision-making based on strong evidence of competence and alignment of values. Whatever helps you sleep at night, boss. As his team filed out, still teasing him, Daniel turned to his monitors and pulled up bridges to tomorrow's financial reports and project documentation. Sophia had been underselling her organization's impact. They'd built 17 schools, yes, but they'd also created sustainable maintenance programs, trained local teachers, established community libraries, and documented measurably improved educational outcomes in every single location. The efficiency ratio was remarkable. They were building complete school facilities for a fraction of what most nonprofits spent. And the communities remained engaged years after construction, suggesting genuine local ownership and investment. This wasn't charity. This was systems change. Daniel opened a new document and started sketching out a partnership structure. Not a donor relationship. A true partnership that respected Sophia's expertise while providing the resources and support to scale. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Sophia. Got your number from my very excited board chair who heard about your funding offer. Thank you for believing in our work. Looking forward to Friday. And yes, I know you're probably already building spreadsheets about school construction optimization. Try to relax a little. Daniel smiled and typed back. Too late. Already optimizing. But I'll try to be a normal person for our date. No promises though. Good. Normal is overrated anyway. See you Friday. Daniel set down his phone and looked out his office window at the San Francisco skyline. Somewhere out there, Tristan Blackwell was probably dealing with the fallout of becoming Internet Villain of the Week. Patricia and Richard Pemberton were probably trying to process how they'd sold their hotel to someone who'd been working there as a waiter. And Daniel? Daniel was thinking about school designs and coffee dates and the way Sophia's eyes lit up when she talked about education. For someone who'd spent a decade avoiding the spotlight, he'd certainly made a spectacular entrance into public life. But as he pulled up architectural plans for sustainable school buildings and started making notes, Daniel realized he didn't regret it. Some reveals were worth the chaos. Chapter 3: Building. 3 months later, Daniel stood in a half-built school in rural Arizona, watching Sophia direct a construction crew with the precision of a general commanding troops. The solar panels need to angle 15 degrees more to catch optimal sun, she called up to the workers on the roof. And we're installing battery backup. The power grid out here is unreliable. These kids need to be able to study after dark. The construction foreman nodded and relayed instructions. Sophia turned to Daniel with a satisfied smile. See? This is why we measure everything. Data-driven decision-making. You've been spending too much time with tech people, Daniel said, amused. You mean you? I mean me, yes. They'd been dating for 3 months now, and somehow they'd made it work despite Daniel's increasingly public profile and Sophia's packed schedule. Dinners squeezed between board meetings, weekend trips to construction sites, long phone calls about everything from cryptographic security to optimal teacher-student ratios. The media had noticed, of course. Tech billionaire Daniel Rivers dating nonprofit founder had been a headline for approximately 2 days before the news cycle moved on to the next scandal. Sophia had handled it with remarkable grace, doing one interview with a nonprofit trade publication where she'd pivoted every question about Daniel into talking about education funding gaps. She's good, Rebecca had admitted grudgingly. Natural at media relations. You could learn from her. Daniel had declined to do any interviews himself, which frustrated Rebecca to no end. But he'd been busy with other things. The Grand Meridian was undergoing massive renovations. The staff profit-sharing program was in place. Employee retention was up 85%. Guest satisfaction scores had improved dramatically, and they were on track to be profitable within the year despite significant infrastructure investment. CipherCore had launched a new protocol that made blockchain transactions 40% faster and more secure. Stock price was up. Competitors were scrambling. Industry publications were calling it revolutionary. And the partnership with Bridges to Tomorrow was exceeding even Daniel's optimistic projections. They'd broken ground on 12 new schools in 3 months. Daniel had deployed some of CipherCore's best engineers to optimize everything from supply chain logistics to construction timelines. They'd developed a modular school design that could be adapted to different climates and communities while maintaining cost efficiency. The first completed school had opened 2 weeks ago in rural Mississippi. Daniel and Sophia had attended the ribbon-cutting ceremony, watching as kids flooded into brand-new classrooms with working AC, modern textbooks, and computer labs. One little girl, maybe 7 years old, had tugged on Sophia's sleeve and said, "Is this really ours? We get to keep it." Sophia had knelt down to her level. "It's really yours. Forever." The girl had burst into tears of joy. Daniel had watched Sophia hug that crying child and felt something shift in his chest. Something that felt dangerously close to love. "Earth to Daniel," Sophia said, waving a hand in front of his face. "You zoned out. What are you thinking about?" "The Mississippi opening. It was pretty amazing, wasn't it?" Sophia's expression softened. "Thank you, by the way, for all of this. I know I keep saying it, but it bears repeating. You've changed thousands of lives. We've changed thousands of lives. This is your vision. I'm just providing resources." You're providing resources, expertise, infrastructure, and about 30% of the actual hands-on work despite being a billionaire CEO who could be doing literally anything else. This is what I want to be doing. They stood together in the Arizona heat, watching the school take shape. This one would serve a Native American community that had been dealing with a crumbling school building for decades. It would be ready in 6 weeks, in time for the fall semester. You know what's interesting? Sophia said thoughtfully. When we started dating, I was worried you'd try to control the organization, that you'd have your own ideas about how things should run and I'd lose autonomy. And you've been the most respectful partner I could imagine. You offer suggestions, not demands. You defer to my expertise. You actually listen when I tell you something won't work. She bumped her shoulder against his. It's very attractive. My respect for your expertise is attractive? Incredibly. You have no idea how rare that is. Daniel pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. They'd kept physical affection relatively low-key. Both of them were private people who didn't like displays of intimacy in front of others. But alone on a construction site in the desert, it felt right to hold her. I have something to tell you, Sophia said after a moment. I got a call yesterday from the mayor of Oakland. They want to do a public-private partnership for rebuilding their school infrastructure. 20 schools over 5 years. Daniel pulled back to look at her face. That's huge. It's massive. And they specifically asked for us because of the work we've done in the last 3 months. Daniel, we're being held up as a model for how education infrastructure should be funded and built. You deserve that recognition. We deserve it. This model only works because you brought tech efficiency to nonprofit work. Because you invested not just money but actual intellectual capital. Sophia's eyes were bright. I think we could do this nationally. Not just one-off projects, but a systematic approach to rebuilding education infrastructure in underserved communities. Daniel's mind was already racing. We'd need to scale the team, hire regional directors, develop stronger relationships with municipal governments. Maybe create a separate foundation to handle the increased scope. See? This is what I mean. You immediately start problem-solving instead of telling me it's too ambitious. It's not too ambitious. It's exactly ambitious enough. Sophia kissed him quick and warm. I love your brain. Just my brain. And your face. And your ethics. And your willingness to get sunburned at construction sites when you could be in an air-conditioned office. High praise. They were interrupted by Sophia's phone ringing. She glanced at the screen and frowned. It's Channel 7 News. They've called 3 times today. Ignore it, Daniel advised. Nothing good comes from surprise media calls. Probably, but Sophia looked uneasy. They found out what the calls were about an hour later when they stopped for lunch at a small diner in town. The TV above the counter was tuned to a news channel, and suddenly there was Tristan Blackwell's face filling the screen. Announcing my new initiative, Tech for Tomorrow, which will build schools in underserved communities across America, Tristan was saying, standing at a podium with a backdrop that looked suspiciously similar to Bridges to Tomorrow's branding. I was inspired by recent conversations about education equity, and I've committed $100 million to this cause. Daniel and Sophia stared at the screen in disbelief. Is he? Sophia started. Copying your entire model? Yes. Yes, he is. The news segment continued. Tristan talked about innovative approaches to education infrastructure, and bringing tech efficiency to nonprofit work, and sustainable community-driven solutions. Every single talking point was lifted directly from Bridges to Tomorrow's mission statement. That plagiarizing son of a... Sophia bit off the curse, mindful of the other diners. He can't just steal our work. Technically, he can. You can't copyright an approach to building schools. But the branding, the language, he's even using our color scheme. Daniel watched the segment with cold calculation. Tristan looked polished, practiced. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. He'd been planning this for a while. It's reputation rehab, Daniel said quietly. After the Gala incident, he needed a way to look like a good guy again. What better way than copying the nonprofit dating the man who humiliated him? This is so petty. It's extremely petty. It's also potentially effective. Daniel pulled out his phone. Let me make some calls. 20 minutes later, he had the full picture. Tristan had registered tech for tomorrow as a 501c3 6 weeks ago. He'd hired away 2 of Bridges to tomorrow's mid-level staffers with significant salary bumps. He'd been in talks with several municipalities about school projects, including Oakland. The Oakland mayor called you first, though, Daniel pointed out to Sophia. That means your reputation and track record matter. Tristan has money and marketing, but you have proven results. So what do we do? Sue him? We could try, but intellectual property law around nonprofit models is murky. We'd spend a year in court and maybe win nothing. Daniel thought for a moment. Or we do something better. What's better than winning in court? Winning everywhere else. 2 weeks later, Daniel and Sophia held a joint press conference. His first public media appearance since the Gala incident. The room was packed with reporters. Camera flashes went off like strobes. Daniel felt Sophia's hand squeeze his under the table, grounding him. Rebecca had coached them both extensively. Tell the story. Focus on results. Don't attack Tristan directly. Let the comparison speak for itself. Good afternoon, Sophia began, her voice clear and confident. Thank you all for coming. My name is Sophia Chen, founder of Bridges to Tomorrow, and this is my partner Daniel Rivers, who some of you might recognize from a certain viral video. Polite laughter rippled through the room. We're here to announce a major expansion of our education infrastructure program. Over the next 5 years, we'll be building 200 schools in underserved communities across America, representing a $500 million investment. The room erupted with questions. Sophia held up a hand. Let me finish. This expansion is possible because of a true public-private partnership that brings together Daniel's technical expertise and resources, my organization's proven track record, and collaboration with municipal governments and local communities. We're not just building schools. We're building sustainable education ecosystems. Daniel leaned forward to his microphone. I want to be clear about something. This isn't charity. This is investment in human potential. Education is the highest return investment any society can make. The kids who attend these schools will become the innovators, leaders, and community members who drive America's future. He pulled up a slide showing metrics from their completed schools. In Mississippi, standardized test scores are up 23% in just 3 months. Attendance is up 31%. Teacher retention is up 45%. These aren't just buildings. They're catalysts for community transformation. A reporter raised her hand. Mr. Rivers, what do you say to critics who point out that Tristan Blackwell announced a similar initiative 2 weeks ago with comparable funding? Daniel smiled slightly. I say great. Competition in the nonprofit space isn't a bad thing if it means more schools get built. However, I'd encourage people to look at track records. Bridges to Tomorrow has completed 17 schools with measurable positive outcomes. We're transparent about our costs, our methods, and our results. Anyone considering a donation or partnership should do their due diligence and choose the organization with proven success. Are you saying Mr. Blackwell's initiative isn't legitimate? I'm saying that actions speak louder than press releases. We'll let our results speak for themselves. Another reporter jumped in. Ms. Chun, how do you respond to accusations that you're only getting this funding because you're dating Mr. Rivers? Sophia didn't miss a beat. I'd say those accusations are sexist nonsense that reduce my decade of nonprofit work to who I'm sleeping with. Daniel invested in Bridges to Tomorrow because we have a proven model and clear results. Our relationship is separate from our professional partnership, though I'm fortunate that they align. But surely there's a conflict of interest. Is there a conflict of interest when male CEOs do business with their golf buddies? When they give contracts to fraternity brothers or business school classmates? Sophia's voice was sharp now. Or is this only a conflict when a woman's romantic relationship is involved? Daniel and I have been transparent about our relationship. We have clear governance structures and independent board oversight. Next question. Daniel suppressed a smile. Sophia was magnificent when she was angry. The press conference continued for another 30 minutes. Questions about construction methods, about community engagement, about scaling challenges, about whether Daniel planned to continue his hands-on approach to business after the waiter revelation. Finally, Rebecca wrapped it up. As the room cleared, Sophia slumped in her chair. That was exhausting. You were perfect. The sexism question especially, you handled it brilliantly. I've had practice deflecting that kind of garbage. Sophia rubbed her temples. Do you think it worked? The subtle shade on Tristan. Absolutely. We didn't attack him directly, which makes us look professional. But we highlighted the difference between proven results and splashy announcements. Anyone doing actual research will choose you. Us, Sophia corrected. This is a partnership, remember? Us, Daniel agreed. The following week proved him right. Oakland chose Bridges to Tomorrow for their school rebuilding project. So did Detroit, and Atlanta, and Phoenix. Tristan's Tech for Tomorrow got Denver. One city, one project. The media coverage was brutal for Tristan, though most outlets were subtle about it. Articles comparing the two organizations always managed to mention Bridges to Tomorrow's established track record versus Tech for Tomorrow's ambitious goals. Donations to Bridges to Tomorrow tripled. Volunteer applications quintupled. Several major foundations reached out about partnership opportunities. Tech for Tomorrow's website, meanwhile, still showed stock photos and vague mission statements. He's flailing, Mike reported during a CipherCore exec meeting. Tech for Tomorrow hired a PR firm, but they're working with nothing. No completed projects. No real infrastructure. Just Tristan's money and a copycat mission statement. Do we know if he's actually building anything? Sarah asked. The Denver project broke ground last week. But our sources say it's already over budget and behind schedule because they're learning everything from scratch instead of using proven methods. Daniel felt a twinge of something that wasn't quite sympathy but was close. He's trying to do a good thing. He's just doing it for the wrong reasons. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, James muttered. Or in this case, paved with ego and image rehabilitation, Sarah added. Rebecca, who'd been invited to the meeting to discuss media strategy, leaned forward. We're getting interview requests from everyone who's anyone. 60 Minutes still wants you, Daniel. So does The New Yorker. Wired wants to do a feature on how you're applying tech principles to social impact. Still no. Daniel, I'll do one interview. You choose the outlet. But the focus is on the work, not on me personally. And Sophia gets equal time and credit. Rebecca sighed but nodded. I'll make it work. That Friday night, Daniel and Sophia had dinner at a small Italian restaurant in North Beach, one of their regular spots where the staff knew them and didn't make a fuss. Sophia was quieter than usual, picking at her pasta. What's wrong? Daniel asked. I've been thinking about Tristan. Please don't. He's not worth the mental energy. No, but what he said at the gala about me bidding $100,000 at the auction being trust fund kids who have no concept of what money means. Sophia set down her fork. He assumed I inherited wealth, that I didn't earn it. People make assumptions, especially people like Tristan. But here's the thing, I did grow up with money. Not billionaire money, but comfortable. My parents owned a successful restaurant chain. I went to private schools. I had every advantage. Sophia met his eyes. And I've spent my entire adult life trying to justify that privilege by giving back. Trying to earn the luck I was born with. You don't have to earn the circumstances of your birth. Don't I? You grew up poor and worked your way up. You understand what it's like to struggle. I don't. Not really. So how can I presume to know what these communities need? Daniel reached across the table and took her hand. Sophia, you don't have to have lived poverty to recognize injustice. And you're not presuming, you're listening. Every school you build, you spend weeks in the community first, talking to parents, teachers, local leaders. You don't impose solutions. You collaborate on them. But your privilege gave you resources and education. You're using those advantages to create opportunities for others. That's not something to apologize for. It's something to be proud of. Sophia's eyes were wet. Sometimes I worry I'm just another wealthy person playing at charity, making myself feel good without actually changing anything. Look at the metrics. Look at the kids in Mississippi who are reading at grade level for the first time. Look at the teachers in Arizona who aren't spending their own money on supplies anymore. Look at the communities that have safe, functional schools for the first time in decades. Daniel squeezed her hand. You're not playing at anything. You're doing the work. Real, measurable, meaningful work. Thank you, Sophia whispered. I needed to hear that. They finished dinner in comfortable silence, then walked along the waterfront. The San Francisco fog was rolling in, and the city lights blurred into soft halos. Can I ask you something? Sophia said. Always. Why did you really work as a waiter? And don't say it was just to evaluate the hotel. There's more to it than that. Daniel was quiet for a long moment watching the waves. I was afraid I was turning into them, the people at that gala. The ones who treat service workers like furniture. The ones who think money makes them better. You could never. I could. Easily. That's what scares me. Daniel stopped walking, turning to face her. 10 years ago, I was washing dishes in a casino restaurant in Reno. Completely invisible to the wealthy people gambling away more money than I made in a year. And I remember thinking, if I ever have money, I'll never treat people this way. And you haven't. But I also haven't been tested. Not really. When you have enough money, it's easy to surround yourself with people who agree with you, to lose touch with reality, to start believing your own press. He touched her face gently. So I needed to put myself back in that environment, to see if I was still the person I wanted to be. And I'm still that person. But it takes work. Constant work. Which is why I'm grateful for people like you who keep me grounded. Sophia kissed him, soft and sweet in the fog-wrapped night. We keep each other grounded. That's the deal. Best deal I ever made. They walked back to Daniel's apartment. He'd recently upgraded from his modest place to a waterfront loft, though it was still relatively understated by billionaire standards. As they settled on the couch with wine and comfortable silence, Daniel's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Tristan Blackwell. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to talk to you. Can we meet? Daniel showed the message to Sophia. What do you think? I think he's finally realizing that copying our model isn't the same as understanding it. Should I meet with him? That's your call. But Daniel, whatever you decide, don't let him guilt you into feeling bad for his struggles. You gave him a chance to learn a lesson at that gala. Whether he actually learned it isn't your responsibility. Daniel thought about it, then typed, coffee, tomorrow, 10 a.m. I'll send you the location. And Tristan, come ready to listen. The response came immediately. Thank you. I will. You're a better person than I am, Sophia said. I doubt that. I just think everyone deserves a chance to do better. Even people who started out doing worse. See? Better person. Daniel pulled her closer, breathing in her familiar scent. Outside, San Francisco sparkled in the fog. Somewhere, schools were being built. Lives were being changed. And tomorrow, he'd have coffee with a man who'd once called him worthless. Life was strange and complicated and beautiful. And for the first time in 10 years, Daniel wasn't hiding from any of it. Chapter 4. Legacy. The coffee shop Daniel chose was the same Ritual Coffee where he'd had his first real conversation with Sophia 3 months ago. It felt appropriate for a conversation about second chances. Tristan arrived exactly on time, looking nervous. Gone was the swagger from the gala. He wore jeans and a sweater instead of an expensive suit, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Thank you for meeting me, Tristan said, sitting down. You said you needed to talk. I'm listening. Tristan ordered coffee, took a sip, set it down, started to speak, stopped. Finally, I'm in over my head. With tech for tomorrow? With everything. The nonprofit. My reputation. My entire approach to life, apparently. Tristan laughed bitterly. You were right. At the gala. About all of it. Daniel didn't respond, just waited. I started tech for tomorrow for the wrong reasons, Tristan continued. I wanted to look good, to rehabilitate my image after the gala video, to prove I was better than the internet said I was. I thought, how hard can it be? Sophia Chen is doing it. I'm smarter and richer than her. I'll do it better. That's not a great foundation for nonprofit work. No shit. Tristan ran a hand through his hair. The Denver project is a disaster. We're 3 weeks behind schedule and $2 million over budget. The community liaison quit because I kept overruling her suggestions. The construction crew is threatening to walk off because I keep changing plans mid-build. And I have no idea how to fix any of it because I've never actually built anything that wasn't about making money. Why are you telling me this? Because I need help. And because you're the only person I know who successfully transitioned from tech to social impact without turning it into an ego trip. Tristan met his eyes. I want to do this right, not for my image, not to compete with you and Sophia, but because kids actually need schools and I have resources that could help. But I don't know how. Daniel studied him. The Tristan Blackwell sitting across from him was very different from the one who drunkenly demanded that a waiter deliver a sleazy message. That one had been all performance and cruelty. This one seemed genuinely humbled. What do you want from me? Daniel asked. Advice? Absolution. Advice, definitely. As for absolution, Tristan smiled slightly. I don't think I deserve that yet. I was an asshole to you, to Sophia, to the entire service staff at that gala and probably 100 other places. I need to actually change before I ask for forgiveness. Self-awareness is a start. Is it enough of a start for you to help me not completely screw up the school in Denver? Daniel thought about it. He could say no, could let Tristan fail and learn his lessons the hard way. It would be karmic justice. But there were kids in Denver who deserved a good school regardless of whether their benefactor was a reformed asshole. I'll help on 3 conditions, Daniel said finally. Name them. 1. You actually listened to your community liaison and local stakeholders. You hired experts, defer to their expertise. Your tech background doesn't automatically make you smarter about education or construction or community needs. Agreed. 2. You do this anonymously. No press releases. No credit taking. Just the work. If you're doing this for the right reasons, the recognition shouldn't matter. Tristan flinched but nodded. Okay. What's 3? You volunteer at one of Sophia's schools for a month. Actually volunteer, not writing checks or showing up for photo ops. I mean painting classrooms, assembling furniture, whatever needs doing. You need to understand what you're actually building and who you're building it for. That's... Tristan stopped. That's actually brilliant. Okay, deal. They shook hands across the table. 6 weeks later, Daniel got a text from Sophia with a photo attached. The photo showed Tristan Blackwell in a paint-stained t-shirt, surrounded by kids in rural Mississippi, all of them laughing as they painted a mural on a classroom wall. He's actually doing it, Sophia's text read. And he's good with the kids. Who knew? Daniel smiled and sent back. People can change. Sometimes they just need the right push. You pushed him pretty hard at that gala. That was the wake-up call. This is the follow-through. The Denver school had been completed on time and within budget once Tristan started actually listening to his team. Tech for Tomorrow had quietly dissolved as a separate entity. Tristan had folded his resources into Bridges to Tomorrow instead, becoming a major donor rather than a competitor. It just makes more sense, Tristan had explained when he announced the decision. Sophia has the expertise and infrastructure. I have money and tech skills. Why build something parallel when I can contribute to what already works? The media had covered it as a feel-good story of collaboration. Only a few people knew about the coffee shop conversation that had sparked the change. 1 year after the gala, Daniel stood on a stage in Oakland at the grand opening of the first school in the 20-school revitalization project. Sophia was beside him, the mayor, local community leaders, teachers, parents, and 500 elementary school students who were about to attend a state-of-the-art facility with everything they needed to thrive. Education is the foundation of opportunity, Sophia said into the microphone, her voice carrying across the crowd. Every child deserves a safe, well-equipped school with teachers who are supported and respected. That shouldn't be controversial. It shouldn't be conditional on zip code or family income. It should be guaranteed. Applause rippled through the audience. This school represents a promise, Sophia continued. A promise that Oakland's kids matter, that their futures matter, that their community matters. And this is just the beginning. 19 more schools over the next 4 years, each one built in partnership with the community it serves. Daniel stepped up to the microphone. I'm going to keep this short because this isn't about me. It's about these kids and this community. But I want to say something to the students who'll attend this school. He looked out at the sea of young faces, all watching him with interest. Some of you will become engineers, scientists, artists, teachers, leaders, entrepreneurs. Some of you might even start a tech company and buy a hotel someday. Laughter from the crowd. But whatever you become, remember this. Your worth isn't determined by how much money you make or how famous you get. It's determined by how you treat people, especially people who can't do anything for you. The person serving your coffee, the person cleaning your office, the person who's invisible to everyone else. He paused. Because I was that invisible person once. And I learned that everyone has value. Everyone has dignity. Everyone deserves respect. Don't ever forget that, no matter how successful you become. The applause this time was thunderous. That evening, Daniel and Sophia sat on his apartment balcony, watching the sunset paint San Francisco Bay in shades of orange and pink. You know what I realized today? Sophia said. What? A year ago, you were serving champagne at a gala. And now you're giving graduation speeches and building schools and changing thousands of lives. We're changing thousands of lives, Daniel corrected. This is your dream. I'm just helping fund and scale it. You're doing way more than that. You're showing that wealth can be used responsibly. That success doesn't require becoming an asshole. That the tech industry can actually contribute to society instead of just optimizing ad clicks. High praise. I'm serious. You're proving that ethical capitalism isn't an oxymoron. Daniel pulled her closer. I'm just trying not to turn into the people I despised when I was poor. Trying to remember where I came from. Trying to use what I have to make things better instead of just accumulating more. You're succeeding. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city light up as the sun dropped below the horizon. Sophia. Move in with me. She pulled back to look at him. Really? Really? I know it's fast, but nothing about us has been conventional. And I hate the nights when you're not here. So, move in. We'll make it official. You're asking me to move in while we're watching the sunset on your balcony? That's very romantic. Is that a yes? It's a yes. But I'm bringing all my nonprofit files and they're going to take over your pristine minimalist office. I'll build you a bigger office. Of course you will. Sophia kissed him, soft and sweet. I love you, Daniel Rivers. Even though you're a billionaire who worked as a waiter and bought a hotel just to prove a point. I love you too, Sophia Chin. Even though you outbid everyone at an auction just to support a children's hospital. They stayed on the balcony until the stars came out, making plans for the future. More schools. Maybe education policy advocacy. Definitely a vacation at some point because neither of them had taken a real break in months. 3 years later, the Grand Meridian Hotel was packed for a different kind of gala. This one celebrating the completion of bridges to tomorrow's 200th school. Daniel and Sophia had gotten married the year before in a small ceremony at one of the schools they'd built together. No press, no publicity, just family, friends, and a classroom full of kids who'd made them drawings as wedding presents. Now Sophia was 6 months pregnant, radiating that particular glow that Daniel found mesmerizing. She'd insisted on attending the gala despite his concerns. I'm pregnant, not fragile, she'd said. And this is our achievement, both of ours. I'm not missing it. The ballroom was full of people who'd contributed to the project over 3 years. Donors, volunteers, community leaders, teachers, students from the schools they'd built, local officials, and yes, some wealthy tech people because you needed their money to make change at scale. But the tone was different from that night 3 years ago. Less performance. More genuine celebration of actual impact. Marie from the hotel bar, now the director of guest services, a promotion Daniel had personally championed, approached them with champagne for Daniel and sparkling cider for Sophia. "Congratulations, boss," she said. "Though I still think you should tell the story more often. About working here as a waiter. People need to hear it." "They've heard it enough," Daniel said. "The viral video has 50 million views now. And it's still one of my favorites," said a voice behind them. They turned to find Tristan Blackwell, now the director of tech integration for Bridges to Tomorrow. He'd been working with the organization full-time for 2 years, using his actual skills to improve education technology in their schools. "Tristan." Sophia hugged him carefully, mindful of her belly. "I thought you were in Atlanta for the opening. Flew back just for this. Wouldn't miss it." Tristan turned to Daniel. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" They stepped away from the crowd, finding a quiet corner. "I wanted to thank you," Tristan said, "for giving me a chance to be better than I was. For not just writing me off as an irredeemable asshole. You did the work. I just gave you the opportunity. Still, that coffee shop conversation changed my life. I was on a path to becoming one of those bitter rich guys who complains about millennials while contributing nothing. And you showed me there was another option." Daniel smiled. "How's the education policy work going?" "Good. Really good. We're making progress on state-level funding reform. It's slow, but it matters." Tristan paused. "I never thought I'd care about systemic change in public education. But here I am, lobbying state legislators and loving it. People change. Sometimes they just need the right catalyst." As Tristan walked away, Sophia appeared at Daniel's side. "That was nice. Look at him, actually doing meaningful work instead of just trying to get richer. Everyone deserves a chance to grow," says the man who grew from trailer park to tech billionaire to education philanthropist. "I prefer guy who built some schools with his brilliant wife." Sophia laughed and took his hand, pulling him toward the stage. "Speaking of which, we're on in 5 minutes. Ready for your speech? Do I have to?" "Yes. You're the face of ethical billionaire behavior. Rebecca says your popularity is through the roof with millennials and Gen Z because you walk the walk. I hate being a public figure. I know, but you're good at it when you try." They took the stage together. The crowd quieted. Sophia spoke first, as always. She was the heart of Bridges to Tomorrow, the vision and the drive. She talked about the 200 schools they'd built, the 150,000 students who now had access to quality education, the communities that had been transformed. Then Daniel stepped up. "3 years ago," he began, "I worked as a waiter at this hotel. I served champagne to people who didn't see me as human, who treated service workers like furniture. And I did it because I wanted to understand whether I was still the person I'd promised myself I'd be when I was poor." The room was silent. "I'm telling you this not because it's a fun story, though it apparently makes for good viral videos, but because it's a reminder. Money changes circumstances. It doesn't change character. You choose your character. Every day. With every interaction." He looked out at the assembled crowd. "Some of you in this room have more money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes. Some of you are struggling to make rent. Some of you are students, teachers, community organizers. All of you matter equally. All of you deserve dignity and respect. The schools we've built aren't charity. They're investment. Investment in human potential. Investment in communities. Investment in a future where every kid has a fair shot regardless of the zip code they're born into." He put his arm around Sophia. "My wife and I are about to have a daughter, and I want her to grow up in a world where people are valued for who they are, not what they have. Where success is measured by contribution, not just accumulation. Where the measure of a society is how it treats its most vulnerable members. So thank you all for being part of this, for building schools, for supporting education, for choosing to use your resources, whatever they are, to make things better." He paused. "And to anyone watching who's currently working in service industry jobs while dreaming of something more, you matter. Your dreams matter. The way people treat you says everything about them and nothing about you. And maybe someday you'll be standing on a stage like this, telling your own story. The applause was deafening. Later that night, after the gala ended and the guests had filtered out, Daniel and Sophia stood in the ballroom where it had all started. "This is where I told Tristan I bought the hotel," Daniel said. "This is where you became unavoidably public and changed everything. Do you ever regret it? How public our lives became." Sophia thought about it. "Sometimes I miss the privacy, but then I think about the 200 schools. The kids who have opportunities they wouldn't have had. The systemic changes we're pushing. And I think it's worth it. Even though we're now America's favorite philanthropic power couple, according to People magazine, especially because of that, we're showing that wealth can be used for good, that relationships can be partnerships in the truest sense, that you can be successful and ethical at the same time." Daniel pulled her close, one hand resting on her pregnant belly. Their daughter kicked, and they both laughed. "She's going to grow up so differently than I did," Daniel said softly. "And differently than I did too. She'll have every advantage. But she'll also have parents who will make sure she understands that advantages are opportunities to serve, not entitlements to lord over others. You're going to be an amazing mother. We're going to be amazing parents. Together." They stood there in the empty ballroom, surrounded by the ghosts of a gala 3 years past. The night that had changed everything. The night a billionaire had humiliated a waiter, and the waiter had revealed himself as something more. "Do you think Tristan would have changed without that confrontation?" Sophia asked. "Maybe, eventually. Or maybe he'd have kept getting crueler and more entitled until he became exactly like the people he used to admire." Daniel shrugged. "Sometimes people need to be confronted with the worst version of themselves before they can become better. And you needed to work as a waiter to make sure you weren't becoming one of them." "Exactly." Sophia looked up at him. "What's next for us? After the baby? After the 200 schools? More schools? Education policy reform? Maybe something about healthcare infrastructure? That's another broken system that needs fixing." Daniel smiled. "And teaching our daughter that serving others, literally or figuratively, is the highest calling. That being invisible to some people's limited vision doesn't diminish your worth. That money is a tool, not a measure of value. Ambitious. We're ambitious people." They walked out of the ballroom hand in hand, leaving the lights to be turned off by the staff. Staff who were well paid, respected, and who knew their boss understood exactly what their work was worth because he'd done it himself. Outside, San Francisco glittered in the night. Somewhere in the city, in dozens of cities across America, schools they'd built sat ready for Monday morning. Ready for kids who deserved every opportunity. Ready for teachers who deserved support. Ready for communities that deserved investment. And in the Grand Meridian Hotel, in a ballroom where a confrontation had once gone viral, there was only silence and memory and the lingering sense that sometimes the most powerful revelations come not from hiding who you are, but from revealing it at exactly the right moment. Daniel had bought a hotel. He'd built schools. He'd fallen in love. And most importantly, he'd stayed himself. The kid from the trailer park who remembered what it felt like to be invisible, and who'd made it his life's work to see and value every person he encountered. That, more than any fortune or viral video or completed school, was his real legacy. And it was enough. Epilogue. 5 years later, the elementary school in rural Nevada had seen better days before Bridges to Tomorrow arrived. Now it gleamed, newly renovated and equipped with everything a 21st century school should have. Daniel stood with his daughter Emma, now 4 years old and already showing signs of having inherited both parents' stubbornness, as Sophia gave a tour to a group of education policymakers. "Daddy, why are there so many grown-ups here?" Emma asked. "Because Mommy built something important and people want to see it." "Did you help?" "A little bit." "Mommy says you help a lot. She says you're a team." Daniel smiled. "Your mom's pretty smart." Emma tugged on his hand. "Can I meet the kids?" "Sure, Bug. Let's go." They walked to the playground where students were at recess. Emma immediately ran off to join a group playing on the swings, her privilege and their circumstances irrelevant in the democracy of childhood play. Daniel watched her, thinking about the kid he'd been. Growing up poor in a town not too different from this one. Dreaming of escape without knowing how to achieve it. His daughter would never know that struggle. She'd grow up with every advantage: wealth, education, connections. But she'd also grow up knowing that those advantages were responsibilities, not entitlements. She'd grow up watching her parents use their resources to build rather than accumulate. She'd grow up understanding that every person had value, regardless of their circumstances. "She's beautiful," said a voice beside him. Daniel turned to find one of the teachers, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes. "Thank you. She's a handful. The best ones usually are." The teacher paused. "You're Daniel Rivers, aren't you? The tech guy who worked as a waiter." He'd long since gotten used to being recognized. "That's me. I just wanted to say thank you for this school, for caring about kids in places like this. I've been teaching for 30 years, and I've never seen anyone invest in rural education the way you and your wife have. The kids here are worth it." "I know, but not everyone sees that." She smiled. "My daughter is at Stanford studying computer science. Full scholarship. She wants to build educational software. Says you and your wife inspired her." Something warm bloomed in Daniel's chest. "What's her name?" "Maya. Maya Rodriguez. Tell her to reach out when she graduates. We're always looking for people who care about education and understand technology." The teacher's eyes widened. "Really? Really? If she's half as passionate as you seem to be about teaching, she'd be a great fit for our education technology division." As the teacher walked away, clearly emotional, Sophia appeared at Daniel's side. "Making promises to hire people again?" she teased. "Just investing in the next generation of people who actually care about making a difference." Sophia leaned against him, watching Emma play. "You know what's wild? 5 years ago we were just starting this. And now there are kids attending college because they went to schools we built. Teachers who stayed in the profession because we supported them. Communities that have hope because we showed up. You showed up. I just wrote checks and optimized processes. Stop diminishing your role. You transformed how philanthropy works in education. You proved that ethical business practices and social impact aren't contradictory. We proved it. Together." Emma ran back to them, breathless and happy. "I made a friend. Her name is Jessica and she's teaching me jump rope." "That's great, Bug. Can we come back here? I like this school." Daniel and Sophia exchanged a look. "Yeah," Daniel said. "We can definitely come back. Because this building schools, creating opportunities, raising a daughter who saw people as people regardless of their circumstances. This was what wealth was for. Not buying hotels to prove a point, though that had worked out. Not going viral at galas, though that had sparked necessary change. But this investment in human potential. Creation of opportunity. Building a world where every kid, regardless of where they started, had a fair shot at achieving their dreams. Daniel had been that kid once, invisible and underestimated. Now he made sure other kids didn't have to stay invisible. And that was worth more than any fortune could measure.